Hello, my absolutely beautiful astrology soulmates. It's me, Stormie Grace, and welcome to this video where we are going to talk about this upcoming full moon happening at 27 degrees of Aquarius. And I think this one's going to pack a bit of a punch. I do think it's going to pack a bit of a global punch. I think it's going to pack a bit of a personal punch. And so I want to talk about this and lay this out, things that we can consider. Now, there will be a breakdown for all of the signs. You can just click the link that's in the description box down below so you can see not for all of the signs, but for all of the houses. So depending on where this particular lunation is happening in your house, you want to look up the housing area, and then I've got a breakdown of this lunation and things you can expect and be watching for in a general way. Now, of course, the better thing is to get your own chart. So if you do not have your own natal chart, click in my description box down below, come get one from me. It's easy to read because you really want to start to see, not just in a general way, where this astrology is working for you, but where it's working in your own personal chart. That's when it gets juicy and delicious, because it also, when I'm giving you these dates that we're going to talk about, and you start really pattern tracking back into your own life, you can see what's coming and where you've been and how to work with it to make the very best decisions for your life. It's really, really delicious. So check all of that out in the description box down below, okay? Oh, and if you are wanting to really learn astrology, I hope you'll join me in my Astrology 101 Part 2 class that starts September 7th, and you'll be meeting with me live for 6 weeks for $67. $67 while I'm building my school. You get in, you get to be in live community with myself and other astro learners while we're building the school. So if that's you, you want to get more into the chart, you want to really understand how to read what's going on in the astrology from the foundations up, this is the great course for you. That's also in the description box down below, okay? All right, beautiful friends. So we've got this full moon happening. It's at 27 degrees of Aquarius, and this is going to be coming up August 19th here of 2024. And there is a lot to say. So I have made notes. I put beautiful things on the screen for you, and we're going to walk through piece by piece by piece. But I want to start out by backing up just a little bit before we jump into the reality of what's happening at the full moon, because that whole week moving forward, there is a lot going on that will pour into this particular full moon. Now, if you haven't already checked out your August 2024 horoscopes, please make sure you go over to that video and check it out. But I want to share just a little bit more here. Because in the days just previous to this full moon, what has happened? There's been big impact with, first of all, Mars and Jupiter coming together in their conjunction. And that's happened on the 14th. And that's a lot of really big energy because, first of all, as Mars and Jupiter come together, they can make things bigger. And they're coming together in Gemini. Okay, so things are not only made bigger, but there's multiple versions of what's happening. So there's a lot of almost storytelling energy that's on the table here. There's a lot of words. There's a lot of conversation. Some things are just word salad where you're like, what does that actually mean? But there's also, I think, a really big piece of the Mars-Gemini conjunction where your words are showing you expectations that you have of yourself or others. And also expectations that maybe you've had of your community or your society for a very long time. And this particular full moon and the arrangements that are coming here leading up to it are showing you that these structures are really changing, and maybe what the story used to be, what the expectation used to be, is just not going to be as viable anymore. We can't live out of that anymore. So there's a fair amount of energy packing this punch as we look at the Mars and Jupiter coming together here. Now, what it's great for under that particular conjunction is if you needed to start something, or you have to have the courage to move forward and begin something, Mars-Jupiter is absolutely your friend. Your mental fortitude is there. Your mental courage is there. Your creativity is there. So the creative solutioning that we may need to move things forward, to have confidence, a self-confidence, an intellectual confidence that you can move something forward, I think is really going to be helpful in this particular arrangement, okay? Now, just after that, after we see Mars and Jupiter come together, we're actually going to see Mars kick into a square with Saturn. So as we see, and this is on the 15th, so as we see Mars and Saturn kick in together and square, first of all, the square is the 911 of our astrological aspects, right? It's like, nope, you have to do something. Because if you think about it, it's like you're getting squished underneath the square. So all of the tension that's literally pouring into you, the somatic experience of a square is like, this is going to squish me. So you're going to do something to get out from underneath that square, right? So as Mars and Saturn are coming together in this square, it's frustrating. The temperature is up. The temperature is hot, right? Because it's frustrating. You feel like something or someone is blocking some kind of action that you want to take. There's a goal that you want to get to globally. There's something we're trying to achieve and something's in the way. So the temperature is really high when we're dealing with Mars and Saturn. And we can also think of Mars and Saturn as kind of like, Mars being the teenager and Saturn being that really like older adult. And Mars is like, I do what I want. And Saturn is like, no, friend, you do not. And so they are in a tangle. Now, the other way that I'm viewing this is that Saturn also is really truly the authority figures, the stories that have authored our lives, anything that we felt is superior, to include things having to do with old perceptions, right? Old stories that we have told ourselves that we need to live up to. Pisces, Saturn is over in Pisces. So we are really coming up against not just social structures, but we're coming up against social ideas, social ideals, and those have seeped into our everyday being. They have shaped into how you restrict yourself from ambitions that you want, the ambitions that you go to. I mean, it's literally in our cellular DNA. Some of these things we're going to be working out. But that Saturn and Mars, the heat is up, and that's something that we need to be aware of. And with the Mars-Jupiter, now with the Mars-Saturn, the intensity and the heat is coming up. So we're in a little bit of a pressure cooker as we're peaking towards this particular lunation, okay? And as this tension is coming right here, one of the things that is necessary for us to know that you will need to have the courage and the fortitude to let go of old systems, structures, and ideals that used to work. And they don't work anymore in multiple ways. You're going to have courage to move forward. And I think that that's where this full moon and when the Saturn and Jupiter square are coming together are going to be really helpful. So let's talk about that. So first of all, let's talk about the Jupiter-Saturn square that's going to be in place on the same day that we're having this lunation. Because Jupiter is that expansion energy. It's like, yeah, let's get bigger. Let's go beyond our horizons. That would be great. And Saturn is like, no, we're going to build structure around this. We're going to hold it down. This is going to be, the way of things. So as these two are squaring against each other, first of all, we get this sense under this aspect that it's like it's inner tension. Again, the square is bringing that inner tension, but Saturn and Jupiter are also transpersonal, sometimes communal planets when we look at them. So in our communities, we could be feeling a tension and a heat of structures that had long been in place and they are not working. They're just not working, but we're conflicted into how do we expand this thing. But there's an expectation. That's the thing that really gets me about this mutable square between Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn and Pisces is there is an expectation that everybody is thinking that should be met, but those expectations are very different depending on who you talk to. So there's nothing to be had but a clash. So when we're thinking about this, not just in a global way, because communities will see the heat of this. We're going to hear plenty in the news. We've already heard news about, Japan and the stock market and how that started to shift things. We're calling, at least at the time I'm recording this, in the United States, we're calling for an emergency interest drop, where, the things are already moving, the pressure is up. And during this week, I think we're going to hear a lot more globally. But I want you to look at and come into your own life where it's like, what in your life is like, it's your life, it's your world, but opinions and ideas are running in two different directions. Maybe you've got a relationship that's on a little bit of ice, or there's some cracks in that cement because two ideas are running in two different directions. The other thing about this is with Jupiter in Gemini, there is this sense that you may be speaking or presenting a set of expectations, and it's causing a conflict, right? It's causing a conflict. It's causing some kind of recession in the relationship. And I think that that is something prominent in the themes as we look through this particular lunation story, because as we're building up to it, there's so much uncertainty with how do we meet this ideal that this particular lunation is powerful. So then we actually have the full moon happening in Aquarius. And you can see on the screen that I've circled some of the players that we're going to be talking about that I think are really impactful at this lunation, okay? So first and foremost, we've got the sun and the moon in opposition with each other. So our luminaries, our lights that guide our life are going in two different directions. So this is, again, putting that energy at this particular moon where there is tension that is trying to present itself because it would like integration and resolution. But this is a full moon in Aquarius, the great awakener, the great innovating sign, the sign of being future oriented and taking us to the future. Okay, so first of all, what we've got is there's going to be some excitement anyways, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Saturn, but anywhere that there is Uranian energy, we're going to have a little bit of excitement. So we've already got a bit of unpredictability coming up against some uncertain energy in the first place. So this is like, it's going to turn it up a little bit of a notch, okay? Now, we see that we've got this sun-moon opposition in a T-square, which is this little point that you can see over here, to Uranus, the ruling planet of this lunation. When a lunation is squaring its ruler, we're going to be getting something done. So this will take us in a different direction. Uranus in Taurus is going to take us in a different direction from that global energy of we're changing currencies around, we're changing the things that we value, the foundations that you thought were going to be there and they used to work out for a long time, they're not going to be there, which means that the expectations and ideals that we were working with and holding on to, and they're going in multiple directions, we don't actually know where the chips are going to fall. And that's in the global and in our own lives. So what can we do? What can we expect when we're experiencing this particular T-square? First of all, it's not to feel entirely stable unless you have really mastered this integration, right? But it is to the other way to say, what have I done to prepare for an unpredictable financial economy? What have I done and what am I doing to secure my future, right? To be secure in my finances. Uranus is in Taurus. What am I doing to secure that I have food and my family has food that's going to be of the right quality, right? So you're really kind of pushed in this way where your ideals and your structures were this for a long time. And now you're like, oh man, I kind of have to figure out what I'm going to do for myself and how I'm securing myself in case the system doesn't look exactly like it used to and what I was able to expect for a long time. Now, the other piece to this lunation I just could not get my eyeballs off of is we see, look at this sun energy. And look at this connection over here to not only Mercury, that's retrograde. So we are looking over these things from the past. We've got conversations. We've got words coming out of our mouth that are from the past. We've got ideas, ideals that are from the past. And we're definitely working with that. And they're all funneling through, right, this Uranus that's over here in this T-square. So the uncertainty is pushing through an awakener, through a just make a decision, get off the fence kind of energy, right? But if you look, we've also got this connection and this conjunction here with Vesta. And I thought this was so interesting to have this aspect, because Vesta is where we want to keep the home fires burning, right? It's hearth and home. I'm doing it. I'm committed to the work. I'm committed to my duties, these kinds of things. Vesta and Leo is you're like, I take pride in how I do this. I take pride in something. However, the system and the structures under you are changing and crumbling. So this really peaks up the energy or the intensity around ideals that you had, and the fact that they are now changing, and this can make us angry. Because Vesta is also this energy where it's like, I have aligned myself. It's my parents, my daddy's proud of me kind of energy, right? I do this to make my parents proud. I do this to make daddy proud of me. It's that kind of vibration, right? You're so committed to it because you're going to make someone really proud of you. However, the system's changing. So the ideas and the ideals are shifting underneath our feet, right? So we're going to be having some real shakeups just with these aspects in place right here. And this is at the sun side of things. So you're motivated over here to make these changes. You've got a lot going on. You could be judging yourself. You could be judging society. You could be judging others against old ideals. What makes you proud? What do you have this really big pride in? But that is opposing a moon that is saying this does not work anymore. This does not work anymore. This has got to go a different direction if it is going to survive in the future, okay? So it's not going to be at all surprising, I think, you guys, if in our communities and in our personal lives, we don't see really, really significant information about even weather patterns changing, moods changing in your home, things having to do with power and electricity, relationships breaking apart because too much of the ideal can't be met. I think that that's really important. But remember, in everything that comes apart, we have to sometimes have really big breakdowns before we have really big breakthroughs. Now, other thought. Just because we are here and Mercury is retrograde, and this is going to be a pretty electric full moon, I think it's best that you do really well to make sure that all of your devices, all of your information is really well backed up. Make sure that you've got that VPN or some kind of online security in place so you don't get hacked. Make sure you've got surge and outlet protectors so that something doesn't happen with all this electricity and your devices get blown out and then you don't have things backed up. You know, in its own way, it's interesting. I think that Aquarius pushes us to put things, whether we want to or not, in the cloud because of how quick it is to blow out a device or to hack into a device. So again, this is challenging us into some of these ideas into the future. How are we going to navigate this? And remember, the pressure is on. That really dynamic angle to Uranus. That's sure something. That is sure something, okay? But let's talk about some other aspects that I think are helpers and also a little bit of a guidepost, okay? So if you look at the chart here, they're not circled, they didn't circle them for you, but if you look at the chart here, we can also see that we have got Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, they're all in a conversation happening here as well. And really, it's Venus opposing Saturn and creating that T-square to the Mars-Jupiter imprint point. Now, this is another T-square, which tends to be typically a tense aspect that we're working with. But in this particular regard, where I think that Venus is shining bright as a helper, is that if you're working from a place of goodness, if you're working for what's real, what you really value, if you're really voting your conscience, if you're really moving with your conscience, you know, you have an opportunity to see if your expectations are reasonable, if they're unreasonable, if that's something you really value, or if that is something that you valued in the past because you wanted to make daddy happy, right? Because you wanted to make the man, your society happy. Is that still true for you? Do you value it? And Venus in this position, I think, is piquing us to really ask ourselves that question. Do you really value this? When you stop, you get quiet, you get below just the level of the intellect, but you get down into the nitty-gritty details of your own wellness, your own thinking, and your own being. Do you value fill in the blank thing? Now, whichever housing areas this is happening in your chart, this is going to bring up those questions for you. So it's a great time as we're looking at that Venus opposition here with Saturn, right? Venus and Saturn come together, and Saturn is like, you have to take off these rose-colored glasses. This is not working out, right? Venus, we need a more mature way. We need a different way to approach this particular subject, and it has to come from a place of heightened maturity. But it can feel like at first, Venus doesn't necessarily like this. Venus doesn't want anybody to get mad at Venus. Venus wants everybody to like Venus, right? So you may also be bumping up against some of your own ideals. Well, where if I tell the truth about what I really believe and I really value, that may create waves. People may not like me. That may create division. I don't want anybody not to like me. So you're trying to like play it safe. So that Saturn Venus can bring a sense of isolation. I feel a little bit alone. I feel lonely with my own values or my own vision. I feel pressured in some way. So what I can tell you is, remember, with Venus, work from your truth that is really your truth. Work with what you really value. And let's say that your opinion is very different about some things in the world than the people you've been hanging out with. If you tell the truth about your opinion, you're going to find that there's a whole bunch of people who have the same opinion that you have, right? So be responsible with where you're wielding and you're sharing your opinions or your expectations and your desires for what you value. But also just know that the integrated point is to, one, be responsible, Saturn, but also tell the truth into your value. Now, as these are trying to push themselves out essentially at that apex point of that Jupiter vibration, what's happening here is that things get big really fast. Things get big really fast. It's like you tell the truth and it sets you free, because you're going to find that others absolutely have the same perspectives as you if you tell the truth about the perspectives that you really truly have. But Jupiter here also can make it so that the problematic things catch fire really fast, right? And you say one thing, you share one opinion that you were under pressure to say, but you didn't really value it, you didn't really believe in it, and then Jupiter goes woof, and it takes that opinion. You know, I think it's going to be an interesting time to watch what's happening online, to watch what's happening in governments, to watch what's happening in countries all around. We know there's plenty going on in the United States, and it's like one word, one decision, one statement is going to get big really fast. And it's the kind of stuff where people either join you or get away from you. So it's a really intense, I think, moon, because there's just so many changes that are happening. And the biggest energy around it is the uncertainty of what is next, but also the having to reevaluate and find yourself in all of this going, what do I really value now? And I have to have the courage to wake up, to innovate, to speak forward to that, because this is the future. This is the future. Now, what I don't think that we should do at this moon is freak out, panic, create drama. Instead, let's use our next tool that we've got in the toolbox to realize that because this is a full moon, you already know something that you're pivoting for. All of these themes that I'm sharing with you, they started to show up already in your life because this lunation is a part of a lunar family. So go back into your life first and foremost into February 20th of 2023. We were planting our seeds of intention under this new moon energy. So what was happening for you then? What were you starting? What were you trying? You were ready to commit to bringing something into a reality, okay? Then when we got to November of 2023, November 20th, go back to that date specifically, we had the first quarter moon at 27 degrees of Aquarius. So we've already been here. You've been in action with something you're building and that you've been working on here. Now, whether or not you fully actualize that goal or not yet, you have been in action. Some things were torn down, you built something else, and now as we're coming together on August 19th, we're pivoting. But first, you're being asked to end something. Have a really big acknowledgement about how you've been doing something and if it's going to serve the purpose of helping you meet your goal going forward. You're being asked to end, acknowledge, or adjust. We have to make adjustments, but we're doing it under all of the light. So you see the tension, you see that the crock pot is cooking. And if you need to pivot, this is where you pivot. This is where you change directions. This is where you say, these are my set of ideals and I want to go this direction. Or you also say, you know, where have you held people too strongly under a particular expectation or vibe, or maybe you were even controlling the foundation that someone else is standing on, and now you're changing and pivoting, and it will change their world, right? So we really get to look at how we're living. If we're in alignment with the truth and what we really value is impacting not just us, but our world and the worlds of the people around us as well. Now, we're going to find a culmination to all of this May 20th of 2025 when we come to this last quarter time. And in the last quarter, we're turning away from what you started to build in 2023. You're like, I did it, I built it, I got all that I could out of that experience, out of that grouping, out of that forward motion. And so now you're going to turn away from it and let it come to its completion. But typically what we've built also starts to pay its dividends at that time. You know, it's like, oh, you're getting your recognition. You built something here. Maybe you're getting financially invested in at that time, or you're showing your financial, you're receiving things financially from it. So when you're looking back in your life, go specifically into these patterns of time and what was happening for you. Now, the world itself might not have been under as much of the container and the pressure cooker as we're experiencing, and so we'll kind of see the lid pop. But in your own life, where have, at a personal level, these things and these dates, you were working on something, and now it is the time that this thing will innovate, get new perspectives and expectations. Maybe you're building a new foundation under yourself. Going from here, you're pivoting to build your own new foundation because you found out that old one is not going to work. And this is the time where it's like, I can see it more in my personal life than just in the dramas of the global governmental big business stage. All right, my absolutely beautiful friends, I think this is going to be an interesting lunation. I would love to hear what house this lunation is happening in for you. And of course, remember, you can click in the description box down below to get a little breakdown of how this is going to impact some of those themes for each house going through your chart. Again, if you want to be able to do this and study this for yourself, have more clarity, put words to it, come and join me in the Astrology 101 Part 2 class while it is at its discount rate. And we are building the Grace Astrological Fluency Academy, where we help you read, write, and speak fluently the language of astrology. All right, beautiful friends, check out these videos I've got popped up here for you next. I love you, and I'll see you in our next video. Bye, everyone.